Wow.
Wow.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in a home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Well, they certainly are here to help this show because they are one of our best advertisers and longest lasting advertisers. Greetings and welcome to another edition of The Week That Was, which is also known as the shred of the once well-populated staff of Deadline Detroit. Now it's just a few of us left, and Allan, basically. I am your pale imitation of a host, Nancy Derringer, sitting in for Saeed Khan, who is on another one of his trips and apparently missed his connecting flight home and is right now in the air. Maybe he's even watching us. If he's sitting in like a Delta flight with decent connectivity, he might even be watching us right now up in the sky.
Can you imagine him sitting anywhere else?
We live in a world of miracles, I have to tell you.
Right.
So let's get started. As usual, we have our illustrious panel of experts. To my actual left, but it looks like my right, is labor and community activist Barb Ingalls. We're going to go around the horn clockwise. Next to her is one of our troika of lawyers, which is, of course, Joel Sklar. Below him, pollster Ed Sarpolus, beaming in from Lansing. Beverly Watts. And Beverly, what are we calling you these days? I can never remember.
I have so many hats and so many titles.
Okay.
But today you're going to call me a political strategist.
Political strategist. And
I'm honored Ed is on because he's the expert.
And a woman of many hats. Yeah, exactly.
I'm an expert because I have to switch to third computer. I've got so many computers that all of them are connected to my phone. So when I have to go back to my very old computer, which I haven't used in a year.
Okay. Well, at least it works. We can see you this time. So there we go. The second member of our troika of lawyers, Bill Seikaly, and holding us all on his narrow shoulders. Allan, have you lost some weight? Your face looks thinner. I haven't seen you for a while.
A little bit.
Okay, good. That's good.
It's amazing what a traumatic injury will do.
Yeah, exactly.
Allan, I think you ought to stick with your just a hunk of burning flesh.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, Bill, don't make us bring that picture up. I haven't seen it in about 6 weeks now.
And if I look tired,
have to get it ready.
Okay.
If I look tired, I'm taking care of my young child.
I call him a hunk of burning flesh. This is the response.
I would have totally been attracted to you in your. And here he comes. All right, here he is.
You were totally attracted to me?
No, to Bill.
Talking to Seikaly, get together.
And still is.
And our third member, of course, is the fantastic and quotable and Yiddish spouting Steve Fishman. All right. Has everybody been properly introduced to their liking? Can we get on with it? Because
get on with the getting on.
We took last week off because of the holiday, and it was such a crazy news week leading up to that I almost used my administrative capability on this platform to just take it over. Kind of like when the revolutionaries rushed the TV station, in some, republic that's falling, but and just do a show for whatever. But I decided not to do that. I guess we have to start out by talking about the tragedy in Texas, where, of course, the flash floods in Kerr County in the middle of the state have led to well over 100 deaths. There's still many, many people missing. The carnage is almost unbelievable. The cleanup is going to be both grisly and wrenching because every single one of those piles of debris has to be carefully disassembled in case there is a body in the middle of it. It's just terrible. And I have to say, as far as we are concerned, as commentators on current events. I don't think FEMA has done jack to help these people. David Richardson has not, the acting director of FEMA has not made an appearance. The president of the United States yawned and went golfing. Kristi Noem is apparently running from her Instagram studio to Fox News to deny any kind of culpability for this. So who wants to start?
Well, I can make a comment here. Basically, right now, Texas, because they never allot any money for emergencies, has $26 billion in reserve that they're not using. Really? Number two, they have an emergency fund of $1 million that they don't even know how to get access to.
What is it in Bitcoin? Somebody forgot the password?
Probably so. I thought that was really funny. The fact they got 26 billion, which is they have no access to, and 1 million for emergency, and they can't even figure out how to get it.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. And I think that's bad. I'm sorry. I think that's bad too. But right now, when we're dealing with a catastrophic, a loss of lives, and still we're trying to find, I think the federal government needs to step in. Here you're talking about doing a takeover in New York. If somebody's elected in the general election, you want to step in. What about stepping in and helping Texas? Yeah, they have money that maybe they haven't utilized. Yes, they didn't use FEMA's emergency system for all cell phones, just to people who have signed up for it. But we're talking about human lives, children's lives. The president goes golfing. Come on now.
Yeah, I know. There's Bill.
Yeah, there's no question. Everybody here is right. This is sad. This is disgusting. But I think we need to step back and take a look at what this is really about. And I think that this is exactly what happens when we decide to transfer wealth from the poor to the wealthy. Yep. Kristi Noem, they're so concerned about saving money at every level. Kristi Noem has a policy that she herself has to approve any contract that goes out for it, including emergency contracts, in excess of $100,000.
Which is insane.
When you consider the scope of this problem,
right,
$100,000 is a drop in the ocean. Not a bucket, but an ocean. Mm-hmm. Next, we have to remember that people are trying to save money. So what didn't they do? They didn't put emergency horns into place.
Right.
A really cheap fix, not to mention what Beverly mentioned about the emergency response to all the phones. This is a tragedy that was going to occur not because it was fake news like the MAGA person running in Georgia for the House of Representatives, because we're seeding clouds and creating an image of climate change, but because we are more concerned about transferring money from the poor to the rich. Mm-hmm. And therefore, things that should happen to prevent the tragedy didn't occur, which I candidly think is more important, because what's happening is people are pouring their hearts and their money into helping people, which is what we should do. But the government should be there to do this. And more importantly, the government should have been there to prevent this tragedy. It shouldn't have this bad.
I think what this portends is this is the lack of social services in a sense. FEMA should be altruistic. We're doing good things. The country is trying to save and help people who have suffered catastrophic loss. But and it's a social service. What we're going to see, our social service are being cut. You're going to see more catastrophe, some that are visible and some that are invisible. A lot of people who are going to suffer because of these cuts are going to have tragic deaths. They're going to have tragic end of lives. We will never know that. But because they will not have access to health care, mental services, housing, food, the catastrophe, this is a microcosm of what, it's awful, but the catastrophes we're about to see on a micro level and on a macro level.
Yeah, I think so. This is
I have friends down there that they're laid off from FEMA and they're leaving the state, and they're here. Their FEMA is still talking about closing it down. It's going to be all state issues. So that still hasn't changed. But friends are saying they're laid off from FEMA and they're living down there as well as New Mexico, and said, nope, we got to leave the state. We don't have work.
And unfortunately, we better be looking at this, because it's Texas today, and Lord knows who. This is how, if anything ever happens in any other state, this is exactly what we're looking at. No help.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's one thing in Texas, which is a wealthy state. I mean, at least parts of it are. As Ed pointed out, they've got an awful lot of money in reserve. But what happens when this happens in Mississippi or in Arkansas or West Virginia or some state that doesn't have these kind of resources? It's going to be even worse. This is one time when I think I kind of miss Joe Biden, because the one thing that Biden was really, really good at, that grandfatherly warmth, that Irish charm that he could put on. And he would say things like, of course, we're going to take care of this. We are the United States of America. We are the most powerful and wealthy united country on the planet. And we don't turn our back when things like this happen. We come together and we help each other.
Yeah, but
the federal government is the only institution that can do that.
But the governor has said we should be praying about this. We should not be looking for blame. It's just time to pray.
Yeah, screw him. Right. So
Biden had a competent government. You can say whatever you want about Joe Biden. You can like him or hate him, but people went in there and they did their jobs and they did them right. If you talk to people that lived in North Carolina last year when that hurricane came through, despite all the bad press, which was bullshit, FEMA was there. People were there right away. And the money got pulled after the November election. But
right.
No, I mean, they were there doing it, and it didn't matter who they voted for. I mean, that's because that's what it's supposed to do. This is so frustrating. And what Jill said, this is about priorities.
Exactly.
People is more important than FEMA. Sorry.
Steve.
Let me ask this question, and it's particularly directed at Beverly and Ed, I suppose. If you took 10 MAGA people and you were questioning them, and you said to them, what do you think of the President of the United States not even making an appearance when you've had deaths like this? What do you think the MAGA folk, how many out of 10 would say he's an asshole for not going down there?
I want to say 10 out of 10 would support him still, but I would say at least 9 out of the 10, one probably would say he's an asshole. The rest of them would find a way to spin it to blame Texas and Kirk County.
No, I'm not even asking about blaming anybody. I'm just saying the fact that he did not go there, to me, is beyond comprehension. You don't have to be Bill Clinton, the world's most empathetic person. Right. What do you think 10 MAGA people would say just about that?
Just my opinion, I think that they would spin it to support it.
I would say 3 or 4 would be upset, but they would say, I'm going to still vote for him again.
Yes.
They did that about Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass when there were wildfires. Yes. Steve, the one thing I would say about that is, and I've heard this argument made before when there's a huge disaster like this with chaos and cleanup and mud and everything else, is that it's not necessarily a good thing for the president to arrive right away, because anytime the president travels, it's like a tear in the space.
It's a distraction.
It just requires security and all the other shit that goes with it. But he didn't even say anything. I mean, he basically went golfing. I mean, he could have made an appearance from his desk or somewhere and said something, but he didn't say anything. I mean, whatever was released from the White House was clearly not written by him. I mean, because it didn't have random capital letters and everything else. I mean, he's so full of shit. But go ahead, Mike.
I think, one, it's a reminder about climate change, is severe weather, and there's something we can't do about certain things, but we shouldn't be cutting people from the Weather Service. We shouldn't be cutting people from FEMA. We should be trying to figure out, how do we get ahead of the curve so this doesn't happen again? Instead, they just keep cutting and cutting. I mean, I liken it to somebody going under the hood of a car to repair it and not knowing anything about it and just pulling out wires and going, we don't need that. This doesn't look like anything. And they're just with no idea of how the government functions, and they're fucking up the government. They're making the government so incompetent at every level, from the Justice Department to FEMA.
That's the intention.
Yeah, that's the intention.
I think it's important, Alan. I love your analogy. I love your analogy about the car. But let's make it clear. They're going under the hood of somebody else's car. They're not doing it to their own car. They would. This is not what they do to people with money. This is not what they do to people who can have influence. This is what they do to people that candidly they don't give a shit about.
Yep.
And that's what's going on. I mean, I think part of the embarrassment of what happened ultimately was that you had a bunch of middle class and upper middle class folks camping along this river who got swept up, and they're the ones getting the press. And I think that just speaks volumes to where we are in this country. And as I went through preparing for the show today, I noticed this about virtually every story in the news.
Yeah.
This is what happens when we decide we're going to take money from the poor and lower class and give it to the wealthy.
Yeah.
This is the jam we end up in.
Well, and it's also the way you show that government can't do anything right. Put, idiot incompetence in charge. I mean, have you heard about this guy who's supposedly in charge of domestic terrorism? He's 22 years old. I mean,
No experience.
It beggars belief. I mean, his spokeswoman, Caroline Levitt, is like 27. I mean, come on.
Well, I think what you create.
This is not incompetence for people who are getting it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the bigger problem. That 40%, I will tell you, Beverly and Ed, I wish that there would be 3 or 4 who would say, I'm upset, but I'm still going to vote for him. I don't, that 40% hasn't moved much, has it, Ed?
No,
No.
nope, not at all.
No. It's just, it's cemented in place.
You got to remember, there are also the same evangelicals that still believe that he's in the Bible. Okay, that he's
Right.
Antichrist. That's where I would go with that.
When you put a 22-year-old head of an agency like that, when you put all these people who are less than qualified, chances are they're not going to challenge you as a president, say, no, this isn't right or whatever. They just say, okay, he wants it. And that's what he's created in this administration. The last time he was in office, at least he had some people who had some integrity who said, no, we can't do this. This isn't right. But he doesn't have that anymore. He's created the perfect storm.
Right.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
he's creating chaos to take it to say everything's a crisis and emergency, so I can act with absolute discretion.
Right.
And that's what he's doing. He's creating emergencies that may or may not exist, and then taking as much power back as he can. So the more incompetent the legislature, the more incompetent the judicial branch, the stronger the executive branch. And he's a strong man. He's a brute. And this is what brutes do. So there's nothing difficult to understand, about the progression here.
Yeah. Speaking of which, this happened on July 4th, the floods in Texas. Alan, we have some video of what else happened on July 4th.
Okay.
President Trump was at the White House for the 4th, where the festivities included a picnic, fireworks, and even a military flyover. Trump also announced that he's going to ring in America's 250th anniversary next year in the biggest and the dumbest way possible.
And I even think we're going to have a UFC fight. We're going to have, does anybody watch UFC, the great day in the world? We're going to have a UFC fight. We're going to have a UFC fight. Think of this, on the grounds of the White House. We're going to have a UFC fight, championship fight, full fight, like 20, 25,000 people.
I'm like almost literally slack-jawed with amazement. It wasn't the first part of that video I could have done without. It's like, yeah. But the UFC fight, he wants to have a UFC fight on the grounds of our White House. I mean, I can't even laugh anymore. I mean, this is just, it's astonishing. And I'm so embarrassed.
I think they should move Jobby Nooner to the White House front.
that event, I've been to a Jobby Nooner, and I'm here to tell you that event would have more dignity and better, better human beings around there than a UFC fight.
Well, that's why he's eliminating the garden and putting in all that cement. So he's
he's paved the rose garden, for Christ's sake.
Question
Paradise, put up a parking lot. That makes
exactly. That's Joni Mitchell. Question for Beverly and Ed. Okay, what percentage of MAGA people agree with that? 100%? They all think that's a great idea?
100%.
100%. That's their sport. Great idea. Just like they thought it was a great idea for him to turn it into a car lot when he bought Khan's cars right in the White House. And say, hey, you want to buy these cars.
And how much
And
money
they'll all
was
be
Trump
speaking up in America.
for Dana
Replace
White?
UFC.
I remember the first UFC fight I ever saw. I had taken my daughter to a show at the Detroit Fillmore, and I was standing in the back of this terrible concert, and this usher came up to me and tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Ma'am, we have a bar." And I was like, so I rush over to the bar, and I'm sitting there having a drink, and they have like whatever the UFC channel is. And I'm watching this thing, and it starts, and this guy gets knocked down, and this other guy is like basically sitting on top of him, raining punches smack into his face. There's blood everywhere. I'm like, is the ref gonna call this at some point? And the guy next to me goes, "Oh hell no, man, he hadn't tapped out yet." I'm like,
Steve, can you imagine how many red hats he could sell?
This is felonious assault. I mean, it's like, it's not boxing. There's not, there's skill involved, but geez, and what a perfect metaphor for this completely fucked up administration.
Historically, when they had it's not UFC, but the bare knuckle fighting, that was illegal. And I believe Norman Lippett, wherever he may be, is the guy who got it to be legalized, and people were able to do the bare knuckle fighting, which is, obviously pretty frightening. The fact that it's going to be that it would be at the White House, having two people destroy each other for our joy is completely fucked up.
It is. But I have to tell you, I was, after reading about Alligator Alcatraz and the merch line that's coming out connected to Alligator Alcatraz and the memes and everything else, it's like we have become Rome. We have become decadent Rome. I mean, why not just, build a Colosseum and start fighting gladiators again? Because that's exactly what this is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
the Germans hid that stuff.
Just remember, the key fight will be Taylor Green from Georgia. Will be the one that will be one of the WWE.
Let's have her and Lauren Boebert go at each other. It'll be on the undercard.
I think they would be the tag team match against two, as they would call them, libtards. But
all right. Yeah. Since we have our full troika here, I want to ask you guys, what do you think of the final days of the Supreme Court term, which gave us the all these opinions from the emergency docket? Trump is allowed to have mass firings of federal employees. He's allowed. I mean, they just keep adding jewels to his crown and just saying he can basically do whatever he wants. Right.
I mean, you guys actually they're still in session. They're still doing opinions. They're still in session.
Yeah. Well, all right, but I mean, what is
expanding the executive office? They're strengthening the executive. All these.
As though it needs to be
about the Supreme Court. When we whatever it was a year ago when we talked about the immunity issue, we said you can't. Nobody's above the fucking law. They're not going to grant this guy immunity. They granted the guy immunity.
Yeah.
So this has strength. This is how dictators become dictators. The courts are endorsing what he's doing.
Yeah.
Right.
But they got to remember he's not going to be president forever.
Wait.
They got to remember.
For life, like Baby Doc. Yeah.
Nancy, your question was the accurate question. Joel just said the courts are endorsing. The truth of the matter is, most of the lower level courts are not endorsing all this crap, but the Supreme Court is doing. And they're basically saying, and I think it was Kavanaugh who was quoted, basically saying, we are the law, the 9 of us. It's really the 6 of us or the 7 of us, whatever it is. It's not that the courts aren't working. Look at the judge that just now
in New Hampshire.
New Hampshire. That there are plenty of individual judges that are not allowing this stuff. The problem is, as you said about the immunity case, Joel, where everybody's saying, "Oh yeah, right, sure, you're going to give a guy immunity," and then they do it, and it's been the same kind of thought process all the way through all these cases. And now I think all of us, particularly the lawyers, nothing surprises us. Bill, were you surprised? Joel, were you surprised that they're really? I wasn't.
I was. I'd
be surprised if they said no to the guy.
I was completely dismayed. The one that bothered me most, and I have the opinion here. The one that bothered me most is his ability to simply change the bureaucracy in the United States. And what bothered me the most about it is it wasn't a 6-3 opinion,
right?
An 8-1 opinion. But if you read Justice Jackson's opinion. I think it will go down in history if the republic survives. I have some serious questions about that, the way things are going, to be honest with you. But if the republic survives, I think it will go down much like the dissent in the Plessy versus Ferguson opinion. People will look back and say, it is obvious that her dissent was correct. And let me give you a little bit of background. The trial court and the Court of Appeals had stopped Trump for doing this because it's a violation of the separation of powers. Congress creates these bureaucracies, and the president does control them, but within the confines of the law passed by Congress. And what he's doing, and I'm going to use my own example, not one that was found in the dissent. The Department of Education existed ever since, I think it was Nixon who created it. And it's created and funded by Congress. He wants to eliminate it. He doesn't go to Congress and ask for a reorganization. He just fires everybody and doesn't give it its money. That's a violation of separation of powers. That's what the trial court determined below. And the trial court, after having an evidentiary hearing, found a bunch of facts and concluded that the people who brought the litigation were likely to succeed on the merits. The Supreme Court turned that upside down and decided, because they believe that Trump is likely to succeed on the merits, they were reversing the injunction and made a big deal about, we're not passing on the merits. Oh, who knows what's ultimately going to happen on the case? Of course, anything that does happen on the case will be too late, because it'll be 5 years from now, after these programs have been decimated. And so it's a farce. But I believe history will come back, if we survive as a republic, and say, Justice Jackson was right in this opinion. This is the worst separation of powers problem that could happen. And she wrote a wonderful dissent. It's a 15-page dissent in response to a 1-page opinion by the complete court, in which she goes through the history of every other president going back to Congress and saying, I want to reorganize this, and here's why, and Congress has to act to give him the power. He completely ignores this. This is the destruction of the Constitution.
So I can ask the attorneys, are you going to be happy the fact that if he's successful, there'll be no more Harvard attorneys?
Well, they may not have accreditation, I guess, but
Yes.
But you know what's disturbing is that 14th Amendment argument about citizenship. That's common before 2 years.
Yeah.
The New Hampshire judge made a ruling. That's, there's kind of a rocket from like what is it, rocket docket that goes to the Supreme Court with this guy. That 14th Amendment about citizenship is going to be decided, and it would be it's clear to everybody who reads the Constitution what the language says. Any person is entitled to due process. Any person. That's going to change if Trump gets his way, and the whole definition of citizenship is going to change, and that's terrifying. And that's a possibility with what has begun in New Hampshire with this 14th Amendment issue that's going to get elevated eventually to the Supreme Court, and it's gigantic.
And you know what? I think that Joel's right. Anybody who looks at this, every lawyer I've ever talked to about this, says it's ridiculous. There's no way. But who would have ever thought, and I don't remember what law school it was, whoever thought that some student would write a paper in today's world and say the Constitution, when read properly, should then and still does only apply to white people.
Yeah.
And then get an award for the paper.
That's right.
Get an award for the paper.
Unbelievable.
Well, I would remind you that the Michigan Bar Association a few years back had a fiction writing contest, and a racist young lawyer turned in a short story about, I think it was I think it was something that involved him stabbing a black defendant to death with a fountain pen or something like this. And of course, the black defendant's name was like, Cornelius Washington III or something like that. And he spoke with. Anyway, they gave that thing an award. So it was I can't remember the guy's name. I tried to write a story about him when I was at Deadline, and of course he said he was taking a break from all that stuff. But so it does happen.
So, Steve, to answer your earlier question, that's why most of, even with things like Texas and everything else this president does, I think majority of the reason they support him is built on racism, them against us.
Yeah.
Make America great again. That's what they stand by. That's what they believe in. That's why they support him no matter what.
I can't disagree with Beverly at all. But I wouldn't limit it to racism. It's sexism, homophobia. It's every them against us.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, wait.
Go ahead, Steve.
Go ahead, Steve.
I think we might have discussed this a couple of weeks ago, although it seems like I read the article since then. I don't remember who, I don't remember where I read it, but whoever the author was talked about the same things we're just talking about race and sexism and blah, blah, blah. But this writer focused particularly on resentment, that so many of these men, they're resentful, whether they're resentful because they're racist or they're anti-Semites or they don't like women, but their whole, and Trump has the ability to appeal to resentment. He doesn't have to propose anything positive or anything. Here's what we ought to do. Yep. He appeals to resentment. It got my attention when I read that article. I thought that was pretty good.
That's insightful.
I think that's where a lot of the anti-immigrant animus comes from.
Yes.
Because these people come over here and they work their fucking asses off and they're successful in a generation or two, and they're looking at their son who's down in the basement playing video games and has been doing it for 20 years, and they wonder, like, why are they successful and I'm not? It must be because they're immigrants.
Except
it's also not true success. I mean, and this is the thing, is that the people that they're picking up, they're not getting anything for the tax money that they're paying. They're not getting the benefits that these idiots are being told, that they're getting food money, that they're getting all this stuff.
Free healthcare. Yeah.
True. None of that is true, but they're working, they're out there. I walk into town yesterday and it's 85 degrees and it's nothing but Spanish speaking people watering the stuff and putting on roofs and doing all this stuff. And then they say, well, we're going to give these jobs to Medicare people who are able-bodied.
Yeah, that's just what I want up on my roof.
Yeah. Right. But you know what, Barb, that's how he crafts this narrative, and people buy into it because they don't do their own research. They're just listening to sound bites, and that's where they're making their judgment.
And to make it even worse, I'm in the gym the other day, and of course, somebody had Fox News on a zillion TVs, and I'm looking at it, and of course, what do they have? Some immigrant guy charged with murdering somebody. This is what they're showing all the time. And Beverly, what you're saying is absolutely true. There's no independent thinking. There's no independent research, and they're never ever reading or looking at something that contains facts and independent way of looking at the world. So you're absolutely right. I just looked up and I said, oh, here we go again. Right. Yeah.
So. Go ahead, Bill, then we're going to move on.
Nancy, I just want to go back to what you started with. The Department of Education and HHS are threatening to pulling Harvard's accreditation. The irony here, for me, the ultimate irony, they are using anti-discrimination laws to go after Harvard. For God's sake, they can't pull away enough rights from Blacks and Hispanics and LGBTQ people. They can't do it fast enough. But when it comes to Harvard, damn it, you guys didn't enforce the law. We're going to pull $1 billion away from you.
DEI for me, but not for me.
Let's do a commercial.
Let's do a commercial.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Okay, then. Hey, Alan, we've got, let's go to that Steve Croft video.
Okay, this is about the 60-minute settlement.
Well, it's clear.
Explain to me what was going through the mind of Paramount when they said, "Oh yeah, we screwed up. Here's your money." Why not? Why didn't they fight
They
it?
never said we screwed up.
What did
They just paid the money.
So just flat out protection money.
Yeah, it was a shakedown. That's what I call it. I mean, some people call it extortion. That's a legal term. I'm not, but
So-
shakedown is like.
Obviously,
more
this is opinion.
Again, this is just one of those stories in the last week that has just left me slack-jawed, and I don't know what to say about it. Alan.
They were explaining, and the longer version of that was that how it was edited. There was an interview with Kamala Harris, and part of it, a little snippet, was shown in the morning show just as sort of a teaser, and then in the main program, they did not use that part of the interview. They used another part of the interview, and they were claiming they were manipulating, which I've never ever in my
That's not a cause of action.
It's
decades
completely insane.
of journalism have never ever seen that as a cause for a lawsuit. And really, as I put it on Facebook, I said, really, even if, let's say that he did have cause, what are the damages? They claim that he tried to fuck up the election for him. He won the election. You can't possibly damage this guy's reputation. If he got $1 as the judgment, it would be $1 too much.
The level of corruption and the fact that nobody is really even blinking an eye at this stuff anymore is really worrying me, because I feel like the more it happens, the more deadened we become to it.
That's true.
This is like, it's just mind-boggling to me. This was a clear shakedown, and just to make sure, if you weren't keeping up with this story, what was at issue here was Paramount, who owns CBS, wanted to. What was it?
They want to merge. They have a merger pending.
A merger pending, but it has to be approved by the federal government, and this was Trump essentially saying, you're not going to get your approval and you're not going to get your merger and until you pay me,
he needed his beak wet. That's what he needed his beak wet. That's
this
what he
is
did.
true. This is absolute mafia
Right.
bullshit here.
Right. You do the garbage around here.
Yeah.
We'll be partners, right?
Yeah, exactly. So there you go. But okay, so
I mean, we saw same thing with ABC. Whatever their huge settlement was, it was George Stephanopoulos called it rape instead of sexual assault. The judge even said, it could be referred to as rape. We commonly refer to it, but it's technically, sexual assault. And I've never, ever again seen any case where it's that close, where, particularly involving the president of the United States, where the bar is so high for libel and slander. There was no case there.
No, it's substantial truth as a defense.
And George is totally different. I mean, if you listen to him, he's kind of mute. He's different.
Well, this was absolutely a shakedown. It was extortion. It was whatever you want to call it. Yeah. And the precedent this sets, and even though it was a settlement, it was settled out of court. What's the next thing? Are they going to start coming through newsrooms and asking to go through your notebooks? I don't see. What's the difference, Steve?
This all boils down to the same thing we have been talking about for as long as Trump has been on the public scene. The guy's a fucking bully. So you still have bullies, and that's you want to bring a lawsuit like that? Find me 6 jurors. Is that how many you guys have in a civil case? 6 or 7 jurors that are going to agree with that. Yeah. It's nonsensical to me, and I say the same thing every time. Were these people never in a playground in their whole life? It's impossible.
Except for this, Steve. Here's the problem. I agree with Steve generally on this. I think he's absolutely right. The problem is as president, it worked when he wasn't the president, when he was running, but as the president, he has so much power to use the bureaucracy to make them miserable in every single way. These people are just making business decisions.
Mm-hmm. Right, but I'm saying
that's the crime. And I think Nancy really hit it. We become numb to this stuff. And we become numb to it in domestic, but we've got a story coming up on what's going on in Gaza. I think we've become numb to this. I mean, I think that the country would be outraged if they were paying any attention, but they're so outraged about everything else. And, okay, so we're putting them in concentration camps.
Instead, we're talking about how Bibi wants to nominate Trump to get a Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah, they're brilliant.
Right.
Nothing is
all people to nominate Trump. Right. Than to give him the letter nominating him.
Nothing is going to go farther with the Nobel Committee than getting a letter from a guy who's under indictment in the international court.
And under indictment in Israel. Under indictment in Israel by a guy who's convicted of 34 felonies, who had his other charges dropped only because he became president. And you see the video where he says, "Mr. President, I've nominated you for this," and Trump's like, "Oh, me?"
Yeah.
I never saw this coming. You guys are incredible.
I'm flattered.
All right. I don't want to make this a 100% Trump show, but it's like he's Bigfooted his way into all of our brains. Later on, I want to take advantage of what Ed brings to the table, which of course is polling expertise. But let's do one more Trump story. And that is, of course, the air going out of the Jeffrey Epstein's list balloon. Alan, we have another video, right?
There was no list. There never was a list.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review.
Is it really?
Steve's favorite attorney general of all time, Pam Bondi.
The best. Oh, God. Yeah.
The list. For me, I think most of you end up reading it, at least from time to time, the Borowitz report. And the Borowitz report had a story this week that I think sums it up. You remember that famous picture of Trump and Epstein together?
Mm-hmm. There's so many. There's several of them, but yeah.
That's right. But the Borowitz report came out with the story that DOJ has come to the conclusion that is actually Joe Biden in that picture. and that's what's going on here, folks. I mean, that will be the next story.
Wow.
Well, I didn't mean it was on my desk. Somebody
said it got knocked off. So.
Roseanne Barr's outraged. I just read her text. And when she's outraged, MAGA's outraged. And everybody who has, and MAGA, part of MAGA is outraged. The Epstein files are huge. And I wish somebody on the Democratic side would say, well, the reason he's hiding it because he's on it, right? That's what Trump would be doing. Oh, my God, you can produce the emails because everything's criminal. The same with Epstein. It's not being released because he's fucking on it.
Exactly.
And he's not going to dispel that notion. So
we've known this for a while. Steve, go ahead.
I have the same question again for Beverly and Ed. I have the same question. What percentage of MAGA people are all into this Epstein thing and are outraged like some of them are or whatever? What percentage of them give a shit about the so-called Epstein files?
I would say another 40%. It's roughly about 40% always when you look at their hard numbers, okay? It doesn't really change, but as a matter of fact, there was another story if Trump killed somebody. The interview guy said in the end, I would still forgive him because I'm a biblical person. I'm a religious person. Exactly. I will forgive him.
And the Bible says you have to forgive. So that's the answer.
That's what they said. That was their response.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
I'm sorry to keep asking this, but I'm fascinated. And you guys do this stuff for a living. I don't really sit around chatting with MAGA people in the gym.
Well, it's just the biblical thing that Beverly and I deal with every day. We're God's people. That's what we do.
But Steve, I'm totally surprised.
Except that if there's a D in front of the name, then there's a footnote in the Bible.
D for demonic.
You don't have to forgive people who are Democrats.
Right.
Clearly.
But it is sad that everything that's happened up to this point in July, since January 20th, that number hasn't moved. That's really sad. Okay. So.
All right. Let's talk briefly about Michigan. Saeed sends us a list. I don't think people know. He sends us a list of topics that he wants to cover, so that in case we miss something, we have time to bone up. And this one kind of may be on. Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist lands key endorsements for gubernatorial bid. I think he got a couple of unions to. Why are you holding your hand up?
I want to make a question and a comment, but go ahead.
Okay, fine. But he's apparently he got a couple of union endorsements. But I really don't feel like he's even in this race. And so maybe we could go to Ed and kind of get a sense of the Democratic field for governor is shaping up, and what is Garland Gilchrist's place in it?
Well, the last conversation I had with people in Texas, New York, and a few other places, their negotiation, do they give Benson $30 million before the general or after the primary? Okay, Gilchrist is not even on the list. Right now, the other story of the fact is that they wanted to figure out whether or not they can convince Mike Duggan to be the next president of U of M, which he said no last year. They're still pushing that because they want to be sure that Benson gets all the money.
Interesting. Do you think? I mean, Duggan obviously is in this. I mean, he'll tell you he's in it to win it, but I don't see that he has any against somebody like John James and the DeVos organization's deep pockets. I don't see that he could be anything other than a spoiler. I mean,
well, the problem is he has to get two candidates that are bad. Okay.
Yeah.
And right now, the worst candidate ever for governor was Bill Lucas, and he still got 32%.
Right.
Okay. Everybody gets up 37%. In order to win, in order to get a third of the vote or better, he's got everybody that's got to be so bad. And the point being the fact you got to be sure it's a large turnout. If it's a large turnout, all you're going to have is a Democrat and Republican. So that's not going to work.
Right. You have to have
why is he doing it? Why is he doing it, guys? Tell me, please.
Because he woke up. The bottom line, had some conversation with people that are close with him. This is his mind. He knew he couldn't run as a Democrat. He could not do the issues that
he didn't think he could win as a Democrat.
No.
And he wants to win.
And he's getting enough money. He's buying off all the unions in Detroit and Metro Detroit. Okay. He's getting one after another. Garland Gilchrist at least got his Black Caucus supporter. But the point being is, right now is that everybody assumes that his big top five funders in Detroit will continue to give him money. And right now, from an estimate, he needs $20 million for his own primary that he doesn't have to stay relative going into the general. He may have to spend $7 million to win this thing if he even had a chance.
Good Lord, that's a staggering sum. Alan.
Yes. I'll say this, and Ed, you probably disagree. I don't think you're going to underestimate the money that Duggan can generate through. I think Dan Gilbert's going to be behind him. I think the Illichs are probably going to be behind him. I think Bill Ford right away within minutes.
Oh yes.
Endorse him. I think he's a pretty sharp politician. I wouldn't rule him out.
I wouldn't rule him out at all.
Yeah.
He also has lost some weight. That's all.
Yeah.
When he gets a tailored suit, then we're going to really know that he's serious about this shit.
And even though you have the other money on the other side, I'm hearing it even from, off the record, as my Republican people tell me, they are not, and they're hoping John James is not the nominee because they do not think John James can beat Duggan.
Or really, now that's an interesting thought. Yeah.
Well, the problem is the trouble is right now the fact is that it's now looking more like John James because Tudor Dixon is no longer part of the process.
Right.
Republicans don't want Michael Cox because of all his behind-the-scenes bedroom shenanigans.
Right.
Okay. And Huizenga is unknown, and Eric Simpson, the Senate leader down in Benton Harbor area, Republican, he's got like 7 sheriffs that are supporting him. And so the bottom line, it's unless something changes, unless John James loses his sugar baby mom, it's going to be him.
Right.
I just want to
Jocelyn or Duggan. I'd welcome a John James opponent.
John, honest to God, every time that guy opens his mouth, I am just, I'm left flabbergasted by the sucking vacuum of his brain and soul. So there you go, Bill.
But let's point out what we've said before, and I think is the obvious. John James' best chance at becoming governor is Mayor Duggan, because if Duggan and Benson split the vote, he can get a plurality come in. I mean, that's the big risk. I want to go back to the original question about Gilchrist. Ed and Beverly, can you think of less important endorsements than members of the state legislature? I mean, I know that, if the state senators not endorse somebody, that has some meaning. There are some politicians whose endorsement means something, but members of the state house and state senate,
Right.
talk about a yawner.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is that and when you go in the state of Michigan, everybody goes back to the fact is that we have to find another Austin, okay, our Secretary of State. The Black community has the right to be represented. The trouble is the fact is finding somebody of that caliber or Coleman Young, but that's a result of the Constitution convention we had. And Garland Gilchrist, like John Cherry, the white lieutenant governor, they never separate themselves from the governor soon enough to build a presence in the community.
Mhm.
And I, as a matter of fact, I was a consultant, did media for him when he ran for, for the clerk in the city of Detroit. And we were able to move this number to the fact that we were able to show him that he was a leader in his community. But since that time, there's nothing happening. Okay. You got the same problem with poor Joe Tate. Now he's now the Black community is supporting him. And what I don't find with Joe Tate, the same group of people who put him up for U.S. Senate couldn't raise a penny for his run for mayor because they came to me, can we help him raise money? And I says, you can't raise money. So then why are you doing with Joe Tate? It's just, you got to find some leadership. And the problem in Detroit, the Black leaders, they're not Black leaders.
I also think, Ed, you got to be careful saying the Black community, because that's not true when it comes to Joe Tate.
Black leader money.
Black, right, because it's not all of them, and the conversations they're having is just different conversations.
And then Warren Evans is all tied. And Warren Evans is tied to the Republican Party money and the Arab Lebanese money. There is no central everything. You've been around a long time.
Yeah.
If I look at Kim Worthy, if I look at Benny Napoleon, all came from the Arab community, the money that they raised for their races. It was not from the Black community. So the Black community, it has a lot of very good people. I know some of them would like to run, but they can't get support.
But we can talk about that all day long about why the Black community and some of the leaders don't have that funding. That's a whole different conversation.
I understand it, but I hear, as a matter of fact, I've talked to millionaires that are Black. They says, well, no, we're not going to give. They promised Benny Napoleon many times, we'll get you $1 million to run for, and then the checks never show up.
Yeah, but then what you have, and especially in southeastern Michigan, like Wayne County and Detroit, where they show up as the vote. Say, for example, in certain communities who've given that money, when you go out for certain positions in Wayne County and City of Detroit, you still have a problem because you have Black vote. As low as the vote may be, you're going to have a problem getting elected because the Black people do show up to the polls for certain polls for Detroit and Wayne County.
That's correct. They always make up.
So money can't buy you everything.
No, but it
lack
helps
of
to get your
money
name
and
out
your
there.
power at the poll still holds reign in certain situations,
Correct.
in certain elections.
Yes.
Okay. Before we go to our final segment, I was hoping to lighten the mood a little bit, and I just want to say, do any of you guys get downtown much anymore? Because I have to.
Well, I live down
Well, you're there now. I know you are. You're there right now. A guy that I know moved away a couple of years ago, and he's back in town this week with his wife, and he sent out a big invitation. He said, I'm going to be holding a table at Buddy's downtown. Come by, I'm picking up the check. So I thought, well, what the hell, I'll come. I hadn't seen it for a while.
Yeah, huh? The old Grosse Pointe move. It's free. What the hell? I'll go.
Exactly. I offered to throw some cash on the table. He said no. So there you go. But I have to say, he said, we're going to do it on Thursday because the Tigers are not playing and parking should not be such a problem. So I get down there. I haven't been downtown after dark for a while. And all the lots, $25. I'm like, I'm not paying $25 to park. And it's only because of my ninja level parallel parking skills that I was able to find a spot as close as I did. I was about 3 blocks away.
Wow.
But downtown was hopping. I mean, I was just amazed. There were people on the street.
Oh, yeah.
There was some kind of party going on in Grand Circus Park, which looked like it was not official to anything, but they had a DJ. So there were like people dancing and shit. And I mean, it was just like, it was wild down there. It was, I mean, this was not just a This is just a random
No,
Thursday when there's no
this
baseball game.
happens all the time, especially in campus marches. They have this other new place, and it looks like something was built during the Grand Prix, and they kept it up. It's like 2 levels. It's open. I mean, but it's just packed. You know, they're doing a lot of. They have movies down there.
You have a regentrification of the younger people and multicultural, not just black, but white people coming back in the community. For example, there's a lot of small music clubs now. If you want to listen to music. There are tons of that, which growing up in Detroit, that was the one big thing other than going to Chicago or down south. So no, there's a lot hopping, pardon the expression, hopping in downtown Detroit.
And even arts and galleries, and everybody just bringing a DJ, and then everybody just a pop-up. You know, you have a lot of pop-ups.
There you go.
I was going to say almost everybody I saw on the street last night was black. It was a much blacker crowd than you would expect to see in the central,
and you got to remember
the safe part.
You got to remember the casinos have wore out a little bit about where people hanging out in casinos all the time. They still go to casinos, but now they're looking for something new. Okay.
Yeah.
They're still going to gamble, but there's more new things now to go be seen with other people other than just going to MGM Grand to be seen in one of the the show bars.
Right, and it's also it's summer, so it's just nice to be outdoors.
Exactly.
I've been a regular
still with all the construction down here.
Yeah. Bill?
I've been a regular going down Eastern Market for years and years, and this year.
Why don't I ever see you there on Saturday mornings?
I down there. You don't see a lot of people down there because it's so damn crowded, right?
Yeah,
but
exactly.
One of the things I've been amazed about is I've been going later and later. I was there at 3:00 in the afternoon. It was still crowded.
Really?
On Eastern Market last Saturday, and music clubs are down there. You can hear great jazz almost all the time in the Eastern Market.
Well, after they built those new apartments downtown in Eastern Market, some of those are being filled up. So you do have people actually living there now. Okay, it's not just the market.
There's just a lot of movement and a lot of activity in that area all the time. I occasionally wander down to the Eastern Market area on Sunday. The art galleries down there.
Yeah, you can shop.
Everything. It's a great place.
All right. Well, I guess it's all a success then. And my daughter's going to be playing. My daughter's band Shadow Show is playing at the Concert of Colors, which is in a couple weeks. On the South Lawn, we can probably all observe it from Lengel's roof, but I will have to be down at ground level. So anyway,
Nancy, make sure we know. I'd love to see.
Okay, well, it's at 4:30 on Sunday at on the DIA lawn. So let's cross our fingers for good weather, and then followed by a couple of a jazz jam over at the Scarab Club that I want to go to too.
Cool.
Alan, let's go to our final segment.
Downtown Detroit, Robert Wells, Schmuck of the Week.
Oh, and as usual, shall we say? Let's go around the horn and start with you, Barbara.
Me. It is once again Tom Hooman.
Homan, the pig, the guy with the pig-like.
Yes.
Yeah.
The one who got the face he deserves. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
Give me one good reason that kids and seniors can't pick lettuce.
Wow.
Was his remark to
Kids and seniors? I'll give you 2 reasons there. They're very young.
Well, I'm not going out there. I'm not picking fucking lettuce. No, I mean, but this is the with that face, with that fucking face.
I hate that fucking face.
He's got. The worst part is that there are people that actually think that is a reasonable idea.
Yep, I see them on social media all.
Yeah, Christy with her 3 nominations for her official portrait and different cowboy hats. That would be number 2, but Tom is.
We need some visual aids for that, and I don't think Alan's got them lined up.
I sent them to you.
You did send them to me, but they're not loaded into the system. Well, that's Holman. We're talking about Christy Gnomes. There's the 3 finalists for her.
I sent them to you. Yeah, I put them in your email. Everyone, I don't have Ed's email address, right?
But that's okay. That's okay. So, all right.
They're horrible. They're horrible.
They look like the kind of art that you buy at those starving artist sales where it has to match the sofa. So that's that kind of thing. So, Joel.
Okay, I'm going to go with someone else who has a face they deserve, which is Stephen Miller. Take a look at that guy. He is evil personified. And the New York Times did a phenomenal story on him.
Yep.
That is frightening. This guy is got a lot of power, more than anybody knows.
Yeah.
And he is a very rigid in his thought. He's very absolute in what he wants to do, and that's to rid anybody who is of any other heritage of Anglo-Saxon, and he isn't, out of here. And this is a Jewish kid who had liberal Democratic parents. I believe his grandparents may have been in the Holocaust. I'm not sure if they have escaped or survived. It is so awful that you just got to read the article because it's terrifying. The other thing is with Homan, again, that 14th Amendment due process doesn't seem to matter. And I believe a judge just issued an opinion that I read, I hope it's right, that he needs reasonable suspicion. Typically, to do a search under the Fourth Amendment, at least, you need some reasonable suspicion. You just can't, stop somebody on the street. And that's what Homan's been doing, just been stopping people, right?
Right.
Home Depot, 7-Eleven, wherever the fuck they are. And you have a constitution, we all have rights. The courts have said, even these people, you will need a reason. And we'll see if that stands.
Well, and then of course
Miller's wife went with Elon Musk when he left Doge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. There's Christy now.
The poor horse.
Yeah.
So and imagine how you would react if some unidentified masked men came up to you on the street and grabbed you by your elbows and started dragging you into a van. You would fight like hell. I would anyway. And then of course they slap a resisting charge on you then.
Right. And then they'll fly you to a foreign country. Apparently that's okay. Go to Sudan. It could be your child. It could be my kid. This is fucking. I can't overemphasize the danger of snatching people off the streets.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen that in my life.
Yeah, and that was all because Stephen Miller was not happy with just getting the criminals.
Right, you need 3,000 arrests a day, no matter where you're going to get them. Exactly. And it is schools, churches. It's just ugly. So
it is.
My schmuck for forever.
Good for you, Ed.
I have to say, I was up in arms this morning. I cannot believe that Pam Bundy would deny MAGA Republican their Epstein list, which is made up of thousands of elite Democrats. I cannot believe it.
Good. Pam Bondi. So excellent choice. Beverly.
No, mine is simple. I can't. As I see another story pop up on my phone about the loss in Texas. My schmucks definitely is Kerr County director of FEMA and ultimately the president for putting priorities over people. And I just, it's catastrophic. They're the schmucks of the week. And I truly hope. Let me just stop there because I'm about to get into some terrible troubled water. So they're my schmucks.
Okay. Two of the girls who are sitting in the Zoom dead are, what the hell? How did that happen?
You're special.
This is not a balloon kind of comment. Were the twin granddaughters of David Lawrence, who was the former publisher and editor of the Detroit Free Press. So,
oh my God,
a tragedy. Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh my
a tragedy.
God. A lot of babies.
Yeah, a lot of babies. So, Steve.
It's interesting. As time has gone on, we have the same people as our schmucks of the week because they continue. Pam Bondi does something the first week, somebody makes her the schmuck, and then she pulls some crap like this, and she's obviously a schmuck. My schmuck is Kristi Noem, only because at a time when you think you might want to do something, all she ever worries about doing is going on television. Mm-hmm. And I have to admit, when Barb sent those 3 photos, this is the 3 photos she wants to have as her photos in her office, or it's going to be.
I assume it'll hang in the state capitol and pier or whatever it is. So,
anyway, she's my schmuck, but really everybody that you guys are mentioning, it's impossible to ignore Homan every week. It's impossible to ignore Bondi every week. And so I suppose that the easiest thing is maybe we should either just declare all of them schmucks of the week for the rest of their careers, or we're going to have to start hunting out little small ones like Saeed does sometimes.
There are hells below us. So they're absolutely.
Anyway, Kristi Noem's mine, but I'm going to start looking for next week. I'm going to look for some individual that screwed over a little kid or something in a park on Greenfield.
Okay, Allan.
I'm going to say Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. For the New York Times had a great editorial just talking about how they are destroying and making America less safe. They're taking away all the experienced people. They're firing people who are involved in investigating January 6th and who are investigating Trump and stuff like that. I've never seen, and people are scared. And the Washington Post had a story, I think today, talking about how people at the Justice Department, the FBI, are scared about their jobs, which you can't operate when everyone's afraid for their jobs. The other one, real quickly, is Netanyahu for nominating, saying he's going to nominate Trump as for Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, two fucking criminals, two particularly, I mean, people, it's just crazy.
It is amazing.
What, me? Nobel Peace Prize? Come on.
Yeah.
It's the bizarro world.
You're going to make me your clap? Phil.
Yeah, I've got a couple. They all surround Gaza. We didn't get a chance to talk about it, but Defense Minister Katz and Netanyahu who proposed a humanitarian city for all the residents of Gaza. It would begin with about 600 Palestinians would be moved there, with eventually the goal of the entire population of 2.1 million people moved there. Palestinians entering the zone would be subject to security screenings and would not be allowed to leave once they enter. Does that sound like to anybody else? Does that sound like a concentration camp? And as a special guest star to this, Alan Dershowitz, who announced this week that if we're going to end Hamas, we've got to start killing the human shields that they use. This is amazing. This is a man whose readings and writings I used to respect. I want nothing to do with Dershowitz. He's become a psychopath of Trump.
Well, yesterday he announced he has the Epstein list. Did you remember that?
On the Epstein list.
But it's privilege. It's privilege. I wish I could reveal it, but privilege.
You know who might
He's
have
always
the
been an
Epstein
asshole. That guy's always been an asshole. Always.
This guy might have the Epstein list.
No, he's on the Epstein list.
He's definitely on it.
All right, that leaves me then. And I just want to say today is the 58th birthday of the founder of this show, Craig Foley. And Craig Foley was the one who came up with the Schmuck of the Week segment. And he also was the one who decreed that the only rule was that you couldn't make it Trump because it was named for him.
That's right.
And
we used to run.
And now it's time for Deadline Detroit's nominees for Schmuck of the Week.
And that was Craig Foley.
But today I'm going to break the Foley rule and give it once again to our president. After watching him embarrass himself in front of the president of Liberia. Liberia is the first West African nation. And when he was meeting with some African leaders and when the president of Liberia spoke, he said, "You speak such good English. Where were you educated?" Not knowing, of course, that the national language of Liberia is English. Because this idiot can't be bothered to even glance at a briefing book, you would think somebody on his staff would have given him a walk and talk on their way into the meeting. Liberia not only has English as its language, its official language, it was basically a colony that was created to repatriate freed slaves and free Black people in the United States. Abraham Lincoln was very big on it for a time before he changed his mind. But this was, this is a little piece of America in West Africa, or at least that's the way it was founded. And the idea that he doesn't know the first goddamn thing about the place is just so on brand. And I just thought we have to go with this week. So there we go. So, all right. I know Steve has billable hours he's got.
How many times do I have to tell you? I've never billed for an hour in my life. I don't bill.
Okay, well, you got that flat rate work.
I just gotta bring the money. That's it. Either they bring it or they don't.
Or that wine that you drink. What is it? The Seamus.
By the way, Seamus, that's my granddog. That's my kid's dog. I gave him that name.
Okay.
And I have to be babysitting him for 4 days while the kids are out of town and my wife's out of town. So I got to get done and get home so I can deal with Seamus, the granddog.
That's
okay,
great.
Love
that dog.
We'll say goodbye to you first. So thank you, Steve Fishman.
Wait, I want to tell you one other thing. There's a lady in the gym. She's a wonderful person who takes care of of rescue dogs, et cetera. She brings in for us to see today 2 little tiny pit bull puppies that they rescued from some horrible thing. And they're teeny. And what does she name them? Scooble and Javi.
Oh my God.
I love it. I love it.
I would have gone with Crockett and Tubbs myself, but there you go. All right.
All right,
Once
bye.
again, we have come to the end of another hour plus, and we have to thank everybody for joining us today. And of course, the panel. Thank you, Steve Fishman. Feel free to leave. Thank you. And there he goes. Thank you. And Sarpolus. Thank you, Joel Sklar. Thank you, Beverly Watts. Thank you, Bill Seikaly. Thank you, Barb Ingalls. And of course, with the last word, we go to Allan Lengel.
Drive home safely.